I'm giving you exactly 5 minutes, he said, checking his watch with practiced indifference. That's all I have left to waste on hope. The words came out harsher than intended, but 33-year-old Bennett Crawford was exhausted. Tired of blind dates arranged by well-meaning friends, tired of forced conversations that led nowhere. He'd built Crawford Industries from nothing, conquered boardrooms across 3 continents, but couldn't seem to master the simple art of human connection. Then she laughed. Not a polite giggle or nervous titter, but a genuine, unguarded laugh that filled the small carnival space between the ring toss and cotton candy stand. 28-year-old Harper Sinclair stood there in a yellow sundress, cotton candy melting in her hand, and laughed at his declaration like it was the most absurd thing she'd ever heard. 5 minutes? She said, eyes sparkling with amusement. Well then, we better make them count. I'm Harper, and I think your watch is running slow because you've already wasted 30 seconds being grumpy. Bennett blinked. In a world where people usually agreed with him or feared him, her playful defiance was startling. I'm not grumpy. I'm realistic. You're grumpy, she countered, offering him her cotton candy. Here, sugar helps with that, or so I've been told by every kindergartner I teach. Something in Bennett's carefully constructed armor began to crack. He accepted the cotton candy, their fingers brushing briefly, and for reasons he couldn't explain, he didn't check his watch again. Harper worked as a kindergarten teacher, living in a tiny apartment with walls covered in her students' artwork. She'd almost skipped this blind date. Her best friend Stella had set it up despite her protests that successful CEOs didn't date broke teachers who spent their weekends volunteering at animal shelters. But something made her come. Maybe loneliness, maybe hope, maybe just the unusually warm October evening. So what do you actually do, Bennett? Harper asked, as they wandered past the Ferris wheel, its lights beginning to glow against the darkening sky. He wanted to give his rehearsed answer about acquisitions and market strategies. Instead, he found himself saying, "Honestly, I've spent 10 years building something impressive that doesn't actually mean anything. I have a corner office with a view of the entire city, and I've never felt more invisible." She stopped walking. Her playful expressions softened into something deeper. "That's the saddest thing I've heard in a long time, and the most honest." "Your turn," Bennett said quietly. "What's your truth?" She was silent for a moment, watching children scream with delight on the spinning teacups. "I'm terrified I'm too ordinary for anyone to truly see me. I teach kids their ABCs and clean marker off tables, and I worry that's not enough to be memorable, to matter." "You made me forget to check my watch. That hasn't happened in 3 years. I'd say that's memorable." Her smile returned, softer now, more vulnerable. They rode the Ferris wheel, and at the top, with the carnival lights spread below them like fallen stars, Harper told him about her father, a principal who'd passed away 2 years ago, leaving her feeling untethered. Bennett shared about his mother's battle with Alzheimer's, how success felt hollow when the one person whose pride mattered most no longer remembered his name. "Do you visit her?" Harper asked gently. "I do, every Sunday. She calls me that nice young man now, and some days that kills me more than if she got angry or upset." Harper took his hand. "My dad used to say that love isn't always remembered here." She touched her temple. "But it's always felt here." Her hand moved to her heart. "Maybe your mom doesn't remember your name, but I bet she remembers how safe she feels when you're there." Bennett's vision blurred. No one had said anything that made sense of his grief before. This kindergarten teacher with cotton candy on her fingers and wisdom in her eyes had just given him a gift he didn't know he needed. 3 months passed like breathing, natural and essential. Bennett learned to leave his phone in his pocket during dinner. Harper discovered she could be herself without apologizing for her modest life. He showed up at her classroom's holiday pageant, sitting cross-legged on the floor with 5-year-olds climbing into his lap. She accompanied him to visit his mother, reading children's books aloud that made the elderly woman smile even without comprehension. But fear crept in. Harper worried she was becoming too attached, that Bennett would eventually realize she didn't fit his world of galas and business dinners. Bennett feared his demanding career would suffocate what they'd built, that he'd become another disappointment in Harper's life. On a cold February evening, sitting in her small apartment surrounded by student artwork, Harper's voice cracked. "Bennett, I need to know something. When you look at me, do you see someone you're building a life with, or someone you're passing time with until something better makes sense?" The question hung between them, heavy and terrifying. Bennett stood, pacing to her window, his reflection ghostly in the dark glass. When he turned back, his eyes were wet. "Harper, do you know what I was thinking that night, when you laughed at my ridiculous 5-minute rule?" She shook her head. "I was thinking that I'd been living my whole life on a timer, measuring everything, optimizing everything, and I'd completely forgotten what it felt like to just exist in a moment. You gave that back to me." He knelt before her chair. "I don't have a perfect plan or guarantee, but I know that every important meeting feels pointless if I can't tell you about it later. I know your laugh is the only sound that makes my empty penthouse feel like home. And I know I don't want to waste another minute pretending I can do this life without you." Her tears fell freely. "I was so afraid I wasn't enough." "You're everything," Bennett whispered. "You're the reason 5 minutes turned into forever." They married that spring in a small ceremony, half kindergarten class, half business associates who couldn't believe their usually stoic CEO cried during his own vows. Bennett's mother was there in her wheelchair, and though she couldn't remember his name, she smiled when Harper knelt beside her and said, "I'm going to love your son every day for the rest of my life." Years later, on their anniversary, Bennett and Harper returned to that same carnival. They stood by the ring toss where they'd first met, now with deeper laugh lines and weathered hands intertwined. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you'd actually left after 5 minutes?" Harper asked. Bennett pulled her close, his lips touching her forehead. "Every single day. And then I thank God I met someone whose laughter was louder than my fear. Because sometimes the best things in life don't come from careful planning. They come from staying 5 more minutes when everything tells you to leave and finding someone worth staying for forever."